Good to go.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Brad. So Gina, did you want to discuss the rankings now, or do we want to just talk briefly about who I am first?
Yep, they have their sheets in front of them, so if you would like to do the rankings and explain that, that would be great.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, like Gina said, my name is Nick Francis. I just retired from the SEAL teams this year. I'm working with Polaris Defense here in Minnesota. My wife grew up in Minnesota, so we're happy to be back up here. It's a great place to grow up, as you guys all know. So, you had a list of several items on your sheet there, and there's a bunch of different ways to look at it. And there's probably no right answers, but based off of my experience, I'll go through and tell you how I ranked them. And one of the biggest things I thought about when I was going through that list is there's some things on there that you would need for your own personal survival, but there's also things on that list that if you're really lucky and somebody comes along and saves you, those devices would be useful, but you can't count on that. So I focus more on not counting on other people to come and rescue me and what I would need to survive for as long as possible out at sea. Okay. So in that case, the first, the highest priority ranking there for me was, of course, water. We had a 5-gallon container of water there, and I think all of you know by now certainly that water is the most important thing that you need for survival. So, you can go several days, weeks, maybe even a month without food, but most experts would say about a week without water is as far as you can go. And at sea, it would be a lot less than that because you're exposed to, sun and salt water, salt air, and all that can take water out of your body. So, to me, water was the most important. The second thing I chose was you had a container there of non-perishable food, so that can last a long time, even at sea. So along the lines of survival, you got food, you got water already. You'll need food as well. That to me was the best source of food in the flavor selections. And Gina, you able to hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're hearing you.
So the next thing I chose, number 3 on the list there, as I chose the large sheet of plastic because that kind of goes along the lines of water, right? I'm sure you've seen movies or read books about how you can use plastic or other material that doesn't let vapor through to collect condensation and water. So at night it's going to get cooler quickly, and in the morning time you'll have condensation on that plastic, and you can figure out ways to use that plastic to fill back up your 5-gallon container, or at least a little bit of it, capture it into something else. So to me, the plastic was another source of water, and that's why I ranked it as number 3.
We stopped there for a second.
She asked if we could stop there for a second.
Sorry.
You bet.
So you might be interested in seeing how many of the 7th graders got the first rankings right. So how many of you put water as number 1? Okay, so pretty good. How about number 2 for food? Did anybody put plastic as number 3? All right, so they were different on the plastic, but there were some good points. Condensation, collecting all that for water. Did you mention, or were you going to mention the part about, I don't know if you're going on to number 4 or not, or if you're going to mention anything about using it as a sail?
Yeah, why don't we just talk about, you had an option on there, is if you thought something was completely worthless, you can put an X by it. So, you had 8 minutes, and I don't know how crazy the storm was or how much time you had, but 8 minutes is a lot of time to grab pretty much everything on the list, so you never know what's going to be useful or how you're going to use it. So to me, absolutely nothing was useful on the list. I did make a comment to Gino when I ranked this, is just apart from using the plastic for collecting water, you might find other uses for it as well. And the same can be said about all these items. But for example, if there was a really cold rainstorm or something like that, you can cover yourself in the plastic and keep the elements off you. If you happen to go by a piece of land and you saw that land and the wind was blowing in the right direction, hey, maybe you can even use that part of that plastic as a small sail to get you into shore. I mean, I'm not saying that is possible, but it could be. So you never know what you might find a use for once you get out there and once you get into shore.
Go on then.
Okay, so should we go on to number 4 then?
Yep. Yeah.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
So the next, you had a fishing rod and tackle on there, and so again, along the lines of personal survival, what you would need to survive yourself at sea. That's a source of, or potential source of food. You know, like all fishing trips, you got to get a little lucky, but if you don't have it, you can't fish. So I put that down as number 4. You know, there's also creative ways you could use the fishing line and the hooks for, or at least the hooks for cutting things. You could, you know, sew your plastic into a better type system for collecting condensation in water, or for fitting it on you for exposure to the storm. So there's lots of things you can do with the fishing tackle besides just fish. But I chose it for the potential source of food. And number 5, I chose the chocolate bars, even though you have to be a little cautious about eating chocolate bars when your body gets down to a certain level where you don't have the right nutrition. Eating chocolate and foods with a really high sodium content can make you sick. It can actually suck more water out of your body, so you'd have to be careful eating those. But if you're starving at sea, a chocolate bar would go a long way. And I'll give you number 6, and then I'll just pause there. Gina, I assume you want to do like 3 at a time. So number 6, now I'm kind of letting myself get into a little bit of relying on others for help. So the best signaling device that I saw on there was the mirror. And of course, you'd have to have a sunny day or something to reflect the light. But as number 6, I chose the mirror in the event you saw an airplane or a ship. Out at sea there, on a sunny day, you could signal them with your mirror, and hopefully they'd come pick you up, and then you wouldn't have to worry about long-term survival. Okay, so I'll just pause there, Gina, unless you want me to keep going.
Anybody have questions about that so far? All right, so that was number 6.
Yeah.
I think it was, yeah, 6 was the mirror. How many people ranked the mirror up high, like in the top half? Okay. How many people ranked candy bar in the top half? Fishing rod in the top half? All right, okay. Kind of along the same lines a little bit, but all right, so you can go on with 7, I guess.
Okay. Number 7, there was some rope on there, and you know, lots of different uses for that. You may not know exactly how you're going to use it, but we'll just talk about some examples on there. You know, for example, if there was a storm that came up in the life raft, it's not going to be as stable as your boat. So you run the risk of falling out of your life raft, or losing the stuff that's in your life raft. So the rope can be used to tie down the things that are most important to you, your water, your food. In the event your boat flips over during a storm, that stuff would still be attached to your floating raft and you wouldn't lose it. The same could be said about you. You know, you could tie one end securely to the raft and the other end around you. I just wouldn't use a knot that you can't get off quickly. So there's different types of knots where just with a pull of the rope you can come out of it right away. That way, if you flip over and get stuck underneath the raft, you'd be able to just pull the rope, swim to the surface, and grab onto your life raft. But the main use I saw for that rope was just to secure things to your boat, so that if another storm came through, you wouldn't lose everything, and then be in trouble. The next thing I picked was number 8. You know, it doesn't give us a lot about your physical condition. If you had cuts on you, or if you happen to, I don't know, cut yourself with your fishing hook or something out at sea there, having that rubbing alcohol would be useful as an antiseptic, just to clean your cut and make sure that you don't get an infection and get sick. And number 9, I picked the flotation seat. You know, this may sound a little strange, but if you sit on a rubber float for a long period of time, you can actually get sores and what have you on your backside. It's happened to several guys in the SEAL team. So just having something to sit on, you know, for days or weeks at sea, that cushion would be a great way. There's also other things you can do with it. Obviously, use it as a flotation device in case you lost something overboard. You're not a strong swimmer, you can jump in with that to float and grab what you have in the water and bring it back to your boat. You can even cut it open with your fishing hooks, pull out the foam, and use it as another bladder to collect water. If you had a good rainstorm and your 5-gallon container was already full, you could use that as another water bladder. So lots of uses for the seat cushion there. And I'm sure there's more you can think of that I'm not covering now. Okay, so that's the next 3, Gina.
questions there or comments? Other thoughts for the location device that you could use it for? All right. Okay, we're ready.
Okay, you know, the rest of the stuff here, I didn't really see a whole lot of use for, but I didn't put an X by any of it. Number 10, small AM radio, and I was looking for that more for parts than anything else. I mean, maybe you had some battery power in there, and maybe you'd be able to listen to an AM station and hear something about, you know, rescue plans for you, assuming that you were able to get some kind of a radio call out before you went down. So that would be useful just you know, from a situational awareness standpoint. You'd be able to know that they were actively looking for you, and maybe they would say what type of, you know, means they're using for that. Maybe it's an airplane, maybe it's a boat, but you know, you might be able to get a little bit of radio comms there on the AM station. And the other way I looked at it was just using it for bits and pieces. You know, you could take the antenna off and break it and kind of use it as a cutting tool. If you catch fish, it might be useful to kind of, you know, clean the meat off of the fish that you catch, and other bits and pieces of the radio you might find a use for. Number 11, mosquito netting. How many of you guys think that there's a big problem with bugs out on the ocean? Are you concerned about that? No hands going up. So that's one nice thing about being out in the middle of the ocean, is you don't have to worry about mosquitoes or flies, and if you do start to see those types of things, and that'd be good news for you, because that means that you're getting close to land. So, you know, again, I looked at the mosquito netting as, you know, if there's enough of it, it's strong enough, and you catch a fish, maybe you can use that as a net to get it in on board your raft, or some other uses that you might come up with. Number 12, maps of the Pacific Ocean. You know, unless you knew exactly where you were before you went into the life raft, they're not going to do you a lot of good. But if you did know where you were, and you could plot that on your map, and you were a savvy sailor like some guys are, you could get an idea of which way the current was going, and you could sort of keep track of your course over days and get an idea of, am I going towards land, away from land, am I going towards a shipping channel or away from it, and that would help you in planning on, you know, when you should be standing by with your signaling device or anything else. So, you know, unless you really knew where you were before you went in, there's no use for it, but if you did know, you can come up with some uses. And, you know, and potentially, it doesn't say if you have the means to start a fire. You got to be really, really careful with starting a fire on board a small life raft, because if you burn up your boat, you're done, right? But, you know, potentially at night that could be lit on fire and used as a signaling device too, but it doesn't really tell you if you have any way to make it fire. And number 13, same thing, sextant. You got to know how to use it for one thing, which is really, really complicated. You know, I spent 21 years in the SEAL team, and I have no idea how to use a sextant. Next week. You know, so again, just using it for parts and pieces unless you know how to use it as a navigation device. Okay? Any questions there, Gina?
Sextant you can use with the stars? You use it a bit with the stars and angles, and I mean, I don't find anybody know how to use them. They're kind of confusing, I think, but yeah, so maybe bits and pieces with that. All right, last couple.
Okay, the last couple, I think this is it 14 and 15, the last two? Yeah, so there's just two more left. Shark repellent. It's questionable if that stuff even works, and sharks are kind of one of those things that you can't control, so you just have to try to not think about it, because there's nothing you can do about it anyways, right? So, you know, if a bunch of sharks did happen to come by your boat and you wanted to use some of that, then okay, but they're not going to be attacking your boat unless you get the shark that was out of Jaws movie there. But the sharks just basically leave you alone and do their own thing, so you don't have to worry about them. So shark repellent was low on the list. You know, along that lines, you know, if you're bleeding, then you want to stay out of the water, of course. If you're catching fish, you're not going to keep the fish guts in your boat most likely, so you try to look at the way you're drifting and throw the guts in the opposite ways of the drift, right? So that you're putting a good distance between where you throw your fish guts in the direction you're going. So just some common sense stuff there for dealing with sharks. Just try to keep blood and anything that attracts them out of the water. And number 15 was a 2-gallon mixture of oil and gas. It didn't say if you had an outboard motor or not. Gina had sent me an email later that said you did not have an outboard motor, so that's pretty much worthless to you. I got the idea of, hey, you want to start a fire and signal at night, but doing it with gas on a small life raft in the middle of the ocean is just a really, really bad idea. Potentially, if you had a way to light a fire, a couple, 2-3 drops on your map paper, put that on your flotation cushion, light it, get it away from the raft. You can try that as a nighttime signaling device, but other than that, that gas is worthless to you. Okay?
Okay, so how many of you had some rankings that were kind of right on? Had a few that were pretty good? How many had a couple that they were way off on? Just didn't think of that. All right, so we're kind of all over the board a little bit with that. Nick has offered to maybe stay a little bit. Do you still have time that you can stay for some questions?
No, sure, of course.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to hearing some different opinions there, because they're really, there's not really right answers there, and a lot of it's going to be based on luck and what happens to you when you're out there, right? So.
Yeah. Oh, there's. Okay, so maybe some of the questions, if you guys are interested in coming up and asking a question, either about Nick or Navy SEALs, one of the things, it's not necessarily appropriate to ask a veteran about their past experiences, things like that, where they've been, but there might be some other questions you have about Navy SEALs training, but also, like Nick said, he was kind of interested in maybe other ideas that you might have had for some of these, like uses that he didn't mention, things that you might want to ask. So, Brad, you said that if we have a question, we can go to the board there.
And I think for technical issues, I'm going to switch over to this speaker system and see if we can eliminate all the feedback.
Okay.
And then you guys just got to be quiet so you can hear out of the external speakers. I think we'll have better luck.
Okay. All right. So, a couple of you have some questions, things you can think of. Maybe at the table really quick, see if there's some things you might want to ask at the table and who would like to ask them. Might be a question that you have. Okay, take a minute. Okay. Let's try to have maybe just one person from each table to start with, and then if we have more time, we can do that. Okay, one person, maybe have a backup question in case someone else asks yours. Okay, you see, we have that. All right. Okay, it sounds like we have a few people with a few questions. You want to start us off?
So then again, be quiet so you can hear his response.
As well as her. You can introduce yourself. I'm
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Eden, and I was wondering how you become a Navy SEAL. Is there training?
Well, yeah. So you just you do your research on it, make sure it's something that you really want to do, and then you would enlist in the Navy and use there's a physical and academic test that you would take, and pass both of those, then you can go to basic underwater demolition SEAL training in Coronado, and that's a 6-month-long SEAL training course. Really difficult. They have a program in there. It's 1 week long called Hell Week, and it's basically a whole week without food. Without sleep. Lots of food, lots of water, but without sleep. And so the point of that training is just to push you to your physical and mental limits. And if you can make it through that training without quitting, because they won't drop you if you don't meet the certain run qualifications and qualifications. But if you make it through without quitting, then you can go on to become a Navy SEAL. So it's not much to it, but a lot to the training and that sort of thing. Thank you.
Hi,
Hello. What's your
I'm
name?
Tyson, and I was wondering what was the hardest part of training?
I think
Hang on 1 second. Hang on. We're gonna try this
Kind
again.
of here, right?
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, I think you asked what the hardest part about the training was, and sorry I didn't catch your name. It kind of blurred out there a little bit. But to me, the hardest part about training, I thought it was going to be the physical, the running and the swimming, and that sort of thing. But it ended up just being the cold. We did a lot of time in the ocean, and I grew up in Washington State, but in California, I figured the ocean was toasty warm, and that's not the case. The water was in 50s, low 60s pretty much all year round. So just being exposed to the cold for such a long period of time was definitely the hardest part for me. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jacob.
Hey, Jacob.
I was wondering the navigational instrument. What does it find? Is it like, I don't know, what is? Yeah, what is it? How does it work, and what does it find for you?
Yeah, I would love to tell you how it works. I don't know if you caught it when I was saying there that sextant's pretty. I'm not gonna say complicated, but it takes a lot of practice and training on how to use it. So it's nowhere near as easy as GPS, where it just reads satellites and it spits out, hey, here's my exact location. The sextant uses stars to navigate, so you have to have a little bit of knowledge about the stars and where those locations are, and you view the stars to the sextant, and you're able to make some calculations to figure out where you're at on a map. I wish I could tell you how to use it. I think it would be really cool to learn how to use the sextant, but that's about all I know. Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Other questions about? You guys want to know about Navy SEALs or what they do? Another one? Nope. That's okay. Jenny, can you get one? Yeah, but
Hi, I'm
Hey, what was your name?
Jen again.
Hi there.
So I've read a little bit about Navy SEALs in books, and I've heard that you work with other Special Forces units a lot. Is that true?
Oh yeah, yes, it's very true. So a lot of international units, in the UK and Australia and Canada, all of our NATO partners. We work with the Special Forces units, but we also work with U.S. Special Forces from the Army, Air Force, and even the Marine Corps. So the Marine Corps has a Special Forces unit. The Air Force has combat controllers and pararescuemen. The combat controllers are experts on talking to aircraft when you're on a particular operation, and the PJs are combat medics. So they do a lot of care for guys that get injured or hurt during training or overseas. And then Army, you have the Rangers and various other U.S. Army groups that we work with, certainly on a weekly or monthly basis.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you bet, man.
you have one more? We have one more, I think. Anyone else have one that
Okay.
asked before we're done? Oh, you have one too? Yeah, far. It's like you can get one more.
Yeah, it's me. Hi.
Oh, there you go. Oh.
So what my kind of thought is we would use a flotation device and set it on fire to cook fish over, and use it as if they're like planes to smoke.
Yeah, I mean, so I was just kind of looking for a use for it, just along the lines of I don't think anything's not useful. So I mean, if you had a flotation device and something fell overboard and you want to use that to go out in the ocean and get it, then great, you could use it as that. If you want to use your fishing hooks or something to cut it open, take the foam out, you can potentially use it as a water bladder to keep more water inside there in case your 5-gallon container was already full. Or, if you had a way to light something on fire and it was at night and you saw an airplane or a boat going by and you wanted to use fire as a signaling device, then I would probably try to use that flotation cushion to put your fire on. So if you had your map paper or whatever else would burn, maybe like a teaspoon of your gasoline, put that on fire, let it go out with your rope just to get everything away from your raft so you don't burn yourself down, right? Because they may not come to you, they may not see you. And send that out away from your boat and use that as a fire, signaling device. So I was just kind of stretching and looking for a way to use the flotation cushion, but lots of different ways to use stuff, and you would think of a bunch more, I'm sure, if you were out there. Yeah.
I kind of like what you said about how nothing is probably useless in a survival situation. You can often find some use for that. You had one last question from Elaine, and then we'll say bye.
Okay.
Fun to end with.
Hey, my name is Elaine,
Hi, Elaine.
and my question is, when you train, did you have like a motto you worked with?
But yeah, there's a couple. One is the only easy day was yesterday, so it's that goes back since the Vietnam War time, and they're just kind of talking about training and working together, and how it sort of gets harder and harder every day. So yesterday, what you did you thought was the hardest thing you'd ever do, and then next thing you know, you're doing something even harder. So you're able to have the confidence that you can really accomplish anything, and it's all about teamwork and doing it together for sure. So I'd say that's the number one motto that we had, was the only easy day was yesterday.
Yesterday, and that's when you were in the ocean for all day.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Nick, for joining our class today. It was kind of fun to have an expert here who could share what he knows with us.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot to all of you, and thanks for the questions that came up. And those that didn't have questions, have a great day. Thank you, Gina.
Yeah, it worked. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. What do you think of that motto? Wow. The only easy day was yesterday.